All right, next up on the pottery throwdown challenge is a pot called Earthenware that was submitted to me by Maya Elko. As I look at the picture, it appears to be a cylinder in which the upper portion of the wall has been collapsed back over and then made to look wavy. So if you can see that, that's what I'm going to attempt to make at this time. So here we go. So I have a piece of clay that's placed in the middle of my bat, and I'll get that moving. As always, we begin with coning and centering. So hands nice and wet. Press downward, get that ball of clay stuck to the bat. Start squeezing inward to create a conical shape. In and up a couple of times. Water for lubrication as I press downward to center. Not going to take it all the way down. I'm going to cone it up one more time. Coning and centering process, as I've noted in a couple of the other videos. Coning and centering process serves two primary purposes. The first is to make sure that the piece of clay you're working with is uniform throughout. This is especially important if you're working with clay that has been through the pug mill, clay that is otherwise known as recycled. The clay that I'm working with today is V-Mix 5 with grog. It is pugged clay. It is recycled clay. So I want to make sure that I cone and center it effectively to make sure that it's uniform throughout. So as I cone and center, that's the other process, is centering. I want to make sure that my ball of clay that I'm going to work with, whoa, look at that go around. Wasn't that fun? I want to make sure that my piece of clay is centered perfectly on the bat. If it is not centered, guys, that's like walking around the house with one shoe on and one shoe off, or driving around on a flat tire. You get that thumpity thump, that wumpity wump kind of feeling and sound. So make sure, do all you can to make sure that your piece of clay is perfectly centered like this one. So the project at hand is a cylindrical object. So what I want to have, like some of the other pieces I've made that have been more of a bowl form, this one is going to be, I'm going to start off with a piece of clay. As I cone and center it, it's going to be smaller in diameter and a little taller, because I don't need a large diameter or a really wide base, but I do need more in the wall. So that's what I'm going for with this particular piece. Now, what is kind of nice is as I demonstrate this process, I slowed down, I've coned and centered, and now I'm going to use my needle tool and I'm going to make a target. What's the purpose of that target? And I can get fancy and have a little fun with it if I want. Watch that long enough and you'll get dizzy. Now, if I make the target, then I know that that center target, the bullseye, if you will, that's where my fingers need to go right down the middle, so that when I pull it out, that I have in fact found the center of my ball of clay, and I'm working in that capacity. So there we have it. I've now pulled out, and I know by experience the approximate thickness of the bottom of my piece of clay is about 3/8 of an inch. So that's a little bit more than a quarter. I don't want to go too thin, otherwise I run into problems. So now once I've holed it out, now I need to open the clay. So that means I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to bring them outward towards my right palm. Again, just like I did the holing out, I'm going to do this slowly and steadily. The wheel speed is a slow to medium. I want to make sure that I am moving at roughly the same speed that the wheel is. We don't want to do this full speed, okay, because that's going to be like going on a merry-go-round. closer you get to the edge, the more energy there is at the edge, the more you feel it, and the more you're going to want to feel like you're flying off. So with this cylindrical form, what I'm doing is as I'm opening that, I'm kind of setting the inside diameter. I'm going to go back and I'm going to compress the bottom a couple times. Now I'm going to get ready to make a pull. So there's a few different techniques for pulling. As long as you use an appropriate amount of lubrication, most of the pulling techniques will work for you. So you can see I basically just used a thumb and a finger to make that pull. I pulled up a lot of clay and thinned out the wall considerably. So now I'm going to go back, make a couple more pulls, make a groove at the bottom. Most of the work with a pull is being done by your right hand and on the outside of the clay. If you get to the rim, lift right off, come back, make a C and use a finger and compress. Kind of looks like a P. From one perspective it's a P and the other it's a Q. Alright, so I've got a fairly decent cylinder now, okay? But I want to make that wall a little bit taller and subsequently a little bit thinner. So what I'm going to do first off is with nice wet hands, I'm going to squeeze the whole thing back in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of water back on this, and I'm going to make one more pull out of this. Okay, so with pulling, you're making use of as much of the clay that you have in front of you as possible. You're not only, in this case, making the wall taller, the vessel deeper, but you're also thinning out the wall. So you could leave your pots with a really thick wall, but your pot ends up being a lot smaller than it has the potential to be. So it's nice if you truly make use of as much of the material in front of you as possible. So now the next part of this pot is we've got a wall that to some extent is fairly thin. And that wall is going to get collapsed back over. So I'm going to try a technique here. This isn't something that I do very often. But because Maya gave me this challenge, I thought it would be interesting. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to use my wood modeling tool. I'm going to use that beveled edge. And here you can see I'm going to clean out a bit of excess clay down here at the base. So I've done that. And now what I need to do is I need to have enough clay here so that I can fold the rim over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out what I think would be appropriate. And I'm going to hold one finger on the outside below where I want to push. And then my finger on the inside is pushing the upper wall outward. And subsequently, it's going to go downward. So now that I have that, I'm going to swap and I'm going to use my left hand underneath and my right hand on top so I can see better what it is that I'm doing. And as I push that rim downward, now one thing I have noticed here is that my rim is a little bit thicker than what it otherwise is in the pot that is featured in the image that Maya shared with me. So to account for that, what I'm looking at here is the thickness of this rim. So I'm going to try and pinch some of that clay together to thin that out. Kind of making that, I'm using the clay that I folded over, pushing that back inward, and my left finger here is acting as a point of resistance so I don't push inside too far. And as I kind of refine that, I want to make sure that with this pinching process that I work to ensure that the clay that I folded over doesn't create an air pocket between the wall, the inside wall, and the outer wall. I don't want to have any air pockets in there. So I can see here that in my outer piece I've got a little bit of an unevenness there. So I want to tidy that up, and I'm going to use my needle tool to do that. The needle tool for a lot of potters is probably one of the scariest things to use, because until you feel comfortable with it, it can be fairly intimidating. So now that I kind of have my shape and everything where I want it to be, I want to make sure that I'm mopping up the water. Using the sponge just gently to soften up all my edges. All right, so now what I need to do, I'm going to have the aid of one of my wood modeling tools here. I'm going to use that end that looks kind of like a thumb over here. And I'm going to use that along with some fingers. Okay, and I'm going to hold two sides and push in with the other. I'll turn it, and with about the same spacing, I'm going to hold with two fingers and push inward. Turn it, and I'm going to continue all the way around, working to keep my fingers at about the same distance and pushing inward. Holding up, pushing in. Holding up, pushing in. Holding up, pushing in. Holding up, pushing in. And here again, I'm just going to take that last little piece and push that in. So it appears as though what I have created now is I have a pot with a wavy rim, as has been illustrated in the photo that Maya shared with me. So I think I was successful in creating that pot. It kind of looks like that. I've never made one like that before, but I think it was a success. So thanks, Maya, for submitting that as a challenge.